Well, the process of Holy Conversations really has three major pieces. One is a preparation piece. One is the process of holding the conversations, whatever that means. And one is follow-up. So the movement is really preparation, conversation, follow-up. And in the outline we've provided, each of those big pieces has two parts. The first session has to do with getting to know ourselves better, to talking with one another. Who are we? What do we bring to the table? What are our gifts? What's our history been? What are our commitments? That's really the internal work. The second piece has to do with identifying who we should talk to and how we want to talk with them. Every community is different, so every community will have a different conversation. Probably we'll talk to different people in different communities. And a big piece of the work is figuring out who is it that we need to talk to? Who knows us? Who knows the community? Where is there the possibility for a real dialogue? Do we have partners already we can work with? And what's the format that will work for us? Do we want to have one-on-one conversations? Do we want to have a day of meetings? Do we want to have a big gathering after church sometime? What will work for us? And then the final piece, the follow-up, also is divided, and one is to share internally what we've learned. Do we have a new way of looking at the ministry that we're doing? Are there new possibilities for us? Can we see some things we didn't see before in terms of our ministry in the community? And the other piece then is to share with the larger church, with the diocese, what we've learned. Hey, friends, look what we discovered here. This is a new possibility for us. Maybe it's a new possibility for you as well. So the idea really is broadly to prepare, to talk, to follow up, and to do that in such a way that it's manageable each step of the way. Well, I think the first question is, who are you already connected with? Do you have partners? Other churches, other community groups? Do you work with a community food pantry? Do you already have some access to the community that you can mine for more connections? Talk with them about who you should talk to. Maybe invite them to be part of the conversation with you. Can you say, kind of capital W, who should we talk to? I think that's one step. Another is to look at the other folks who are deeply engaged in the community. Teachers, educators, people in community recreation, other kinds of leaders. The mayor in a small community might be a really good source, or other leaders that are respected by the community. Building a list. These are possible people to talk with, and maybe actually having some pre-conversations. Before the conversation, sit down at coffee with a friend and say, this is something we're trying to do in the community. We want to get to know our community better. Who would be helpful in that effort? Who do you think we should talk to? Well, that, I think, is the most important question. Why are we doing this? And in my sense is there's two reasons, and they're really quite different reasons. Maybe one's negative and one's positive, or one's practical and one's theological or something. But one reason is that our default future as the Episcopal Church is not very good. Our churches have varying degrees of success, but we're all struggling with a culture that seems to be moving away from the church quite rapidly. And so one reason for doing this is that if we don't find a way to re-engage with the culture, and fairly quickly, we will find ourselves just increasingly irrelevant, and it will be harder and harder for us to connect. So one reason is to create a new future, a more hopeful future, a future in which the things that we do, we are still able to do in the community. That's probably the negative reason for doing it. It's the practical reason for doing it. The other reason for doing it is responding to God's call. God has invited us into God's mission of reconciliation. God sends us every week into the world to love and serve God's world. And so the positive is to connect in ways that ask the question, what can we do to serve God in this place? I think we're a little prideful sometimes. We think we already know what God wants us to do without taking the time to discern what God is up to. And so the positive reason for these conversations is to engage with others so that together we might discern what God is up to and find some ways to join in. It's really responsive to our baptism. It's really responsive to our call to be peacemakers, reconcilers, lovers of God's creation. Well, to first of all see ourselves as members of a community. None of us can be all things to the community. And some things we're not going to be able to do. And probably the most helpful thing to say is, this is needed, but it's not something we can offer. And then to work with the community to look for who can provide that response, who can do that ministry. It's also to have the courage when we see a possibility to step up and grab it, even though it's brand new, we've never done it before, we think we might fail, nonetheless to trust that God is going to be with us as we try this new thing. So I don't think that everything that is suggested will be appropriate, either for our gifts, the means we have in the community. We may even disagree that what's being asked for is something truly needed. And so some things we're not going to do. We're just going to say, that's not us, that's beyond us, that's not appropriate for us to do. Hopefully, though, at the same time, we will say, now there's a possibility. It's risky. It's going to take some courage, but then we're going to jump in and try. We're going to be willing to take that risk and try something new.
And maybe find new partners.
Find new partners, discover new gifts, learn new skills, and do something we never thought we could do. Absolutely. The word I like is experiment, but I think prototype is a perfectly good word. And it seems to me the issue for us is that we're failing already. That's going back to the default future issue. If we don't do anything, we can write the future. So from my view, trying something and not doing well at it isn't any worse, because we might learn something in the process that's really helpful for the future. So my expectation is not that we'll get these ideas, we'll go out and we'll immediately be successful. I mean, that's highly unlikely. What's more hopeful and for me and more likely is that in the process of trying to do something new, we will actually learn some things that help us to minister better. We're going to have to try more than once. And we may miss the mark for the first time. We may come up with a great idea and discover we don't have the resources to do it. So we have to adjust. But in that process, we will learn new ways to engage the community, and we'll find what God is out there asking us to do. But absolutely, it's an experiment. And one possibility from an experiment is failure. But scientists tell us that that's not ever wrong, because you learn stuff even when you fail. Well, we're trying to, through the website, the Holy Conversations website, have a repository of what people are learning. And so we want to include there every effort that people are making, even the ones that fail. Because we think it's going to be the shared wisdom of all of us that really moves us forward. So we're not going to get everything from the diocese, because I don't know everything. The diocese doesn't have all the tools. But collectively, we may have enough wisdom to help carry this forward. From the diocese, you can expect encouragement and support. We're hoping to have monthly or bi-monthly check-ins by video conference with a little bit of content and an opportunity for questions, so that people who are wrestling with this have a place to ask their questions, have a way of raising concerns, engaging in conversation that may really be helpful to them. This is not a one-size-fits-all effort. And so therefore, there's not a single plan that we all have to adapt or adopt. It's really much broader than that. Each community is unique, so everybody's going to have a slightly different plan, but sharing all the things that we're doing may be really helpful for all of us. Absolutely. I don't, if the congregations don't share, then you'll be stuck with what I know. And heck, I don't know all that we need to know. So the wisdom really, I think, is in the dialogue and in the dynamic, where people say, well, we tried this and it didn't work, but you know what we learned from this? We weren't quite aimed right. Next time we're going to try it this way. And someone hearing that can add in their own experience, and we can maybe refine things without every one of us having to try everything, but can really learn from each other.